Good evening, students. Once again, we are meeting with you for live online class on History Chapter 1. In last class, you studied the social status of France prior to French Revolution of 1789, in which we studied three social strata: the first state, the second state, and the third state. Today we will study the role of French philosopher in outbreak of French Revolution of 1789. Let us start. During 18th century, France had many revolutionary thinkers. Among them were Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu. Their evolutionary ideal helped the French people to fight for their rights. They exposed the inefficiency of the monarch and his government. Voltaire's idea encouraged people to fight against the privileges and finance of the church without guilt. It means these three philosophers, Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu, did a lot in bringing conscience among the mass, and thus the common people now they realize that they must overthrow the monarchy in France, and that is why ultimately the revolt of 1789 or outbreak of French Revolution it happened. Philosophers such as Voltaire and Rousseau inspired the people to rise against all forms of inequality, injustice, and as well as corruption. They preached that a real person rested with the people, and so a king should rule according to the will of the people. It means king must feel the problems of the common people, because the common people had to suffer a lot in French society, because tax were exempted to them one who were having privileged class. In case he monarch failed to do so, people had the right to remove him or overthrow the monarch. In short, we can say that the French philosophers played an important role in the French Revolution. They inspired the common mass of the France with their revolutionary ideas and prepared them to fight against injustices. They did not believe in the doctrine of the divine and absolute right of the monarchs. Rousseau carried the idea forward, proposing a form of government based on social contract. So social contract theory, it were implemented by him also between people and their representatives. Thus you are seeing that how Rousseau played an important role. In the spirit of the laws, Montesquieu proposed a division of power within the government between the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. The idea of these philosophers were discussed intensively in saloons and coffee houses and thus spread among people through books and newspapers. Thus, the philosopher contributed a lot in bringing the French Revolution of 1789. Now, see to the next. Sans-culottes. Sans-culottes were a combination of social forces that emerged in Paris during the course of the French Revolution. They despised the nobility and refused to wear breeches, culottes in French, as this had been the fashion of the aristocrat people. Hence, they acquired the name sans-culottes, that is, without breeches. Instead of breeches, they wore trousers. Sans-culottes made up the bulk of the population of Paris as in other towns. They included wage earners at the bottom to men at the top like wealthy brewer, furniture contractor, etc. Some were clerks, others had been professional soldiers. A few were rich, yet the bulk of the Persian sans-culottes was tradesmen, shopkeepers, craftsmen, etc. During the critical years after the fall of the monarchy in France, the sans-culottes played an important role. See to the next. Now we will discuss about Jacobin Rule. On 10th October 1793, the Jacobin member in the National Convention entrusted the supreme power of France to a special committee called the Committee of Public Safety. This committee superseded the National Convention for the time being. There was the beginning of the reign of terror, जिसे हम आतंक का राज भी कहते हैं. The three instruments through which the Committee of Public Safety executed the reign of terror were: first, Committee of Public Safety; secondly, Revolutionary Tribunal; and third, the Law of Suspects. हमने लाइव चैट में देखा कुछ लोग कह रहे हैं, कुछ बच्चे, कि सर आप बंगला और हिंदी में भी समझाइए. So if you would like to understand such topic in Hindi, then separately one more video I'll make for you. In that, in details, you'll be able to understand. Though, as it is the starting classes of class 9, so you must read the chapter carefully, and then after, when we will come to the main point, that is to say, the MCQs are one mark question round, then surely I'll make you understand more vividly. Now see, the duty of the first was to enforce law and order everywhere in the country. The second one was a sort of criminal court. You can say to the revolutionary tribunal, if you'll say. So the revolutionary court or the revolutionary tribunal was a type of criminal court where counter-revolutionaries were brought to trial. The law suspects was the law enforced by the revolutionary tribunal. The law of suspects was applied widely, and all the persons suspected of anti-revolutionary activities, such as aspects, were hauled up and sent for trial. None of the persons sent for trial came out without a sentence for guillotine. Guillotine was a type of machine in which those who were punished to them, punishment were given to them through this guillotine. Now see to the next. Here, the reign of terror, आतंक का राज, the reign of terror. The National Convention was faced with the dual problem of external aggression and internal rebellion. In such a grave situation, the National Convention empowered the supreme authority of France to a special committee that was known as the Committee of Public Safety. आप लोगों को ये मैं बता दूं कि फ्रेंच रिवॉल्यूशन ऑफ 1789 में जो हुआ, जिसमें फ्रांस के फिलोसोफर जो कि रूसो, मोंटेस्क्यू और वोल्टेयर थे, उन लोगों ने बहुत बड़ा योगदान दिया। उन लोगों ने आम जनता को समझाया कि न्याय मिलना चाहिए, इक्वलिटी मिलना चाहिए, खाली गरीब लोग ही टैक्स दें ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए, और जो मोनार्च यानी किंग, जो राजा होता है, वह जो आम जनता है, जो कॉमन पीपल है, उनका भी केयर करता है। लेकिन लुइस 16 के शासनकाल में ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं हुआ। यही कारण था, विद द फॉल ऑफ बेस्टाइल द rule of monarchy it were overthrown, but for a short period of time, up to the making of the constitution for the France, National Convention was taken the responsibility to rule the nation. The terror unleashed by the committee for a year 1793 to 1794 came to be known as the Reign of Terror. The Reign of Terror was the handiwork of three Jacobin leaders, namely Carnot, Robespierre, and Saint-Just. During the Reign of Terror, more than 20,000 persons were executed in Paris under the blade of the guillotine. उन लोगों को कत्ल कर दिया गया था ये गिलोटाइन मशीन से। गिलोटाइन was a machine of instant death. Now see to the next. I am discussing about the Reign of Terror, in which the Jacobin leaders, three Jacobin leaders, Carnot, Robespierre, and Saint-Just. During the Reign of Terror, more than 20,000 persons were executed. The Reign of Terror came to an end with the execution of Robespierre on 20th July 1794. Now the objectives of the Reign of Terror: to establish law and order by increasing the power of the central government. This was the first objective. What were the objectives of the Reign of Terror? First objective, to establish law and order by increasing the power of the central government. Secondly, to punish the anti-revolutionaries and to organize and strengthen the military power for effective fight against the foreign aggressors. Robespierre and his two associates, Carnot and Saint-Just, were the main organizer of the Reign of Terror. ये तीन बहुत ही महत्व थे जिन्होंने आतंक का राज फ्रांस में फैला रखा था। ये थे रोबेस्पियर, कार्नोट और सेंट जस्ट। इन तीन लोगों ने इतना आतंक मचा रखा था कि जो भी इनके खिलाफ बोलता था उसे वे गिलोटाइन मशीन में डाल करके उनका कत्ल कर देते थे, उनका सिर धड़ से अलग कर देते थे। Reaction to the Reign of Terror was gradually being felt all over France, and the rage fury of it finally fell on Robespierre. और अंत में सभी लोग रोबेस्पियर के पीछे पड़ गए। रोबेस्पियर tried to flee away, भाग जाने की इसने पूरी कोशिश की, but was caught, लेकिन बेचारा पकड़ लिया गया। On 28 July 1794, Robespierre, along with 21 of his associates, were guillotined. गिलोटाइंड एक मशीन है, मैंने कहा जब आपको क्लास 9 के लिए प्रोजेक्ट वर्क दिया जाएगा तो गिलोटाइन मशीन बनाने के लिए भी कहा जा सकता है। तो आपने देखा कि किस तरह 28 जुलाई 1794 को जब रोबेस्पियर और उसके 21 साथियों को गिलोटाइन में सिर लगाकर उन्हें काट डाला गया, उन्हें मार डाला गया, तो आतंक का राज, रेन ऑफ टेरर, वहीं से खत्म हुआ। द इंसिडेंट ऑफ किलिंग brought to end to the reign of terror. The incident came to be known in history as Thermidorian reaction. Sometime to Moscow it is coming, Thermidorian reaction. Now move to our next point. Here is the most important topic: causes of the French Revolution. The first cause was despotic rule of Louis XVI. King Louis XVI had drained the financial resources of France in successive wars. A good number of wars it were fought under Louis XVI. To meet the cost of his extravagant lifestyle, he increased taxes which were paid by the third state. You are knowing it, or it is known too well to you in last class, that for paying tax, those who were belonging to the clergymen or the noble class, tax were exempted to them. It means they had to pay no tax at all. Tax payers were only the third state people, the peasants, the artsmen, the craftsmen, etc. So thus, due to despotic rule of Louis XVI, French Revolution ultimately it happened. Secondly, rising prices. Due to the rise of population in France, there was more demand of food grains, and ultimately it will be, if there will be population rise, then there will be demand for the food grains and not ultimately it will be only. So the price of food soared and the poor could not afford to buy food. So the gap between the rich and the poor widened, and ultimately it brought the rebellion, or you can say the revolution. Thirdly, division of French society. In studies class, very well you understood this. French society was divided into three states: the first state, the second state, and the third state. The first and second state were exempted for paying the tax. Only third state they had to pay the taxes, and the taxes were also very heavy. The first and the second state enjoyed privileges, yet did not pay taxes. The third state pay heavy taxes, both direct and indirect. This discrimination led to the outbreak of revolution by the third state. Now, role of French philosophers in outbreak of French Revolution of 1789. French philosophers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, John Voltaire, and Montesquieu propagated the ideas of society where people would enjoy freedom, equality before law, and equal opportunities also. Their ideas inspired the common people to rise in rebellion. The miserable economic conditions of the people of France and the poor management of finances by the government of France contributed the outbreak of the revolution in France, which ultimately it happened in 1789. The tottering economic structure of France was a very important cause for the outbreak of the revolution. So, thus you understood that these were the causes of the French Revolution, which held in 1789. The most important factor was the social scenario of France. See to the next. Here it is a to match the color. You may try if you can. In study class, these four topics it is taught: tally, capitation, gabella, and tethys. These are a type of tax. In column B, you are able to see religious tax, salt tax, income tax, wealth, and property tax. Try to match it. You can say 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, like that. You can Give your answer in live chat box. See to next one, 1789, Napoleon seized power. 1792, Tennis Court Oath. 1794, France became a republic for the first time. And 1799, Robespierre guillotined. In which year Robespierre guillotined? Just it is taught by me. Try to give the answer. Exact 1 minute you are having in your hand. And after this, your today's live class will end here only. Very soon we will meet on this channel only. अगर आप अभी भी इस चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किए हैं तो आप इस चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर लीजिए और बेल आइकन दबा लीजिए, जिससे कि नेक्स्ट क्लास का इंफॉर्मेशन आपको ऑटोमेटिकली मिलता रहे। और मैंने देखा है बहुत कम स्टूडेंट ही यहाँ पार्टिसिपेट कर पा रहे हैं, इसीलिए उन लोगों के लिए आप इसे ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा शेयर भी करें। 30 seconds more you are having in your hand, and after that I am saying you the answers. It's okay, I am saying you the answer. For 1D, 2C, 3B, and 4A. Teethis is a type of religious text. See to the number 2, match the column. 1B, 2C, 3D, 4A. 4A. It means in 1799, Napoleon seized power. So thus our today's live class, it ends here only.